every laugh, every smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste, the therapist. Let's go.
Hi. All right. So hi, beautiful people. How are you? Today's Monday. I'm excited to be here. We weren't here for the weekend, so I missed you guys so much. And I'm happy that you're here. So whether or not you are, hey, Missy, whether or not you're watching me on the replay or watching me live, my name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. And my goal in coming on here is to just help people kind of shift the way they think. I've been able to do that over the last couple of years by talking to people that are doing things to empower the lives of others and share their story. So I started this podcast in 2018 where I've been, hey. So I'm streaming on YouTube, Periscope, and Facebook at the same time. So since the pandemic started, I started to come on this platform on 3 different platforms and kind of like talk to people that are empowering other people. So I kind of deviated a little bit from the style of my podcast where I don't really go into detail about people's history, but more so thinking about what they're doing today. But today is going to be like a normal podcast type that I would usually do without the audience. So I'm going to like share this person's story. We're going to learn about Shaun Marshall and figure out like what he's doing now. Everybody that I bring on is very intentional. I think there's different sectors of our lives that we struggle in and we don't realize it. So before I bring Shaun on, I wanted to, do my normal thing. First, where are you checking in from? I would love to know where you're checking in from. And also, I just wanted to put up a couple of banners around some support lines. So there is this crisis text line, 741-741. This is a really good line for people that might be struggling. You don't have to be suicidal. You can just be anxious. You can be sad. You can be overwhelmed. As soon as this COVID pandemic quarantine started, the first thing that kind of came to my mind was mental health, because I know that even without quarantine, people were struggling. So now you tackle quarantine on top of it. So there's even a bigger struggle. And so I think now that people are kind of forced to be alone with their thoughts, a lot of that struggle is coming up. So I just kind of wanted to show that as a resource. And I know I have people that listen to me from different places. I found this website, Hope for Today. Is a nonprofit started. The person who started it lost 9 people to suicide and wanted to start this platform. And you can put in your zip code to the country. So there's different spaces to find out what supports are available in your country. I know a lot of different resources here in America, but I'm not really, I don't really know about the other spaces that this is available. Mental health support is available. So that's why I kind of wanted to put that in there like that. Virginia Beach, yes. So I'm gonna bring on my special guest, Shaun Marshall, and I'm gonna have him introduce himself. I'm just gonna take a quick pause so that I can clip this for my podcast and then bring him on. All right. Hello, Shaun. Thank you so much for being here. Can you please introduce yourself to the people? Your mic is off. Hold on. Your mic is off. Unmute mic. Okay, let's go. Let's try that again. Okay. All right. Can you introduce yourself to the people?
Absolutely. My name is Shaun Marshall, and I'm a pastor. I'm a consultant. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, born and raised, lived there for most of my life. And my purpose, I know my purpose. My purpose is real clear to me. At this point in my life, my purpose is to help people be who they were created to be and do what they were created to do and live the life they were created to live. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm Sage's daddy. I'm Veronica's husband. I'm Kathy's son. That's me.
Thank you for that amazing introduction. You wear a lot of hats. So for people that are just joining, what this is going to be is a regular podcast where I'm going to kind of go into Shaun's history a little bit to kind of figure out how he got to where he is. I think his story is important. So you said you was raised in Chicago. Were you raised? Tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Like, were you raised in church? Who were you raised with?
Yeah, so I grew up in a 2-bedroom house with my grandmother, my mother. I'm the oldest of 4 boys, my aunt, her son, and my uncle. And so it was a big family in this 2-bedroom house. So we kind of spread out all over the house. So you got my mother and my brothers pretty much in the attic of the house. And then you have my aunt and her son in one room, my grandmother in another room, my uncle in the basement. So that created sometimes a lot of tension in the house. But one of the things that marked my childhood was that I never really felt like I fit in. I never really felt like I belonged. I never really felt like I could understand just how I fit in this world. I was a Black kid on the south side of Chicago, and I always, English just kind of came naturally to me. So even I can remember being 5, 6 years old, speaking very clearly. You know, I would get into plays. They would always put me on stage. You know, they would have me do the Dr. King speeches every year for Dr. King Day, and all my friends would, they would say, "Man, you talk white. You sound so. Why you talk like that?" And I'm like, "Talk like what? What do you mean?" And my friends, so they would push me away because I was too articulate. Then I went on to a predominantly white college, and I never forget. I remember when I found out what whiteness was, right? So I remember sitting with the dean of students, and I was talking to her, and she said, "My gosh, I said, "What?" And she said, "You sound so articulate." Like the shock on her face. And I said, "Oh, well, how did you expect me to speak? How did you expect me to sound?" And she turned so red, about as red as, the live button right in the corner of this screen. And she just turned so red. And I knew then, okay, I don't totally fit. So I don't fit over here. I don't fit over there. And then so I finally became part of this church. And it's the church that I'm actually working for now. Church on the south side of Chicago, Salem Baptist Church, became part of that church, became part of the youth ministry. And when I joined this youth ministry, it was the first time that I felt like I fit anywhere. It was the first time I felt like I belonged. And what happened is the youth ministry of that church and this church helped me to figure out who I was. They helped me to figure out how I was unique in the world. They helped me to understand, how I was different, and that was good. Like, how I talked, that was a gift from God. How I showed up in a space, that was a gift from God. Even some of the things that I had gone through as a kid, had gone through seeing violence in my home and had experienced homelessness. They helped me to understand how a lot of those experiences, even though they were difficult and even though they were hurtful, that God had brought me through those experiences, and those experiences had actually added value to my story and helped me to be more of a unique person, right? And so that ministry helped me to know, okay, I fit. So there is no other Shaun Marshall that Shaun Marshall's like me, right?
How old were you during this time when you realized, like, I have a place that I fit in?
I was about 17 years old.
Okay.
I was about 17 years old when I first started to realize, okay, I have a fit, like I belong. And what was so powerful for me about that and having that in my life and finding it the way I found it was, I always thought that church was about going to hear a preacher. And I always thought that church was about, heaven and hell. Okay, fire's bad, but don't go there. So you want to go up. So, okay, that's good. So that's what I thought church was. I thought church was pretty much, you hear a sermon, you take that's the place you get some wine and some crackers, and somebody puts you in some water, and you good. But that was the first time that I realized, okay, my life has a meaning, and my experiences and the things that I've gone through and the things that I can do, they help to reveal the meaning of my life. And so that means that I can show up intentionally. I can take my story and let my story inform the decisions that I make, the choices that I make, the way I actually move throughout the world, the way I respond to certain situations. And that was very powerful for me.
So like someone's asking who your mentors were. So I'm curious as well as, you said you went to church and then things changed, but what was it about that space that allowed you for it to click? Because sometimes it doesn't click for people just because they go to a church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so first of all, had definitely some people that spoke into my life, definitely some people that created spaces. Our youth pastor at the time, Harvey Carey, created spaces for us to use our gifts, and other youth workers. Our senior pastor, who's still the senior pastor, James Meeks, was always a person who decided that he was going to be out in the community, that the church couldn't just gather on Sunday morning and, have services, that if there was something happening in the community, if people were hurting, if people were sick, if people were struggling, that the church needed to be the place that responded to that. The church needed to love mercy and do justice, right? So I would see these people operating in purpose and doing things beyond just coming in and singing a couple of songs or preaching a couple of good sermons on a Sunday. And then I was connected to other people in my age group. So I'm seeing 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds who are cool and who are like, reading the Bible and praying and like having fun. And at 17, 18 years old, know what they want to, like, have a general sense of, okay, this is what I want to do. This is why I'm here. And I'm like, yes. And so I went deep into that. I got involved. And, before you knew it, I was at the church almost every day of the week, not because anybody was making me, right? Because we've all had those church experiences. I heard a pastor say I was a drug baby. My mama drugged me on Sunday. She drugged me on Monday. She drugged me on Tuesday to church.
I guess I was a drug baby too.
Right. We were all drug babies at some point, right? But I was coming because I wanted to. So I was getting on the bus, paying my own bus fare, because I needed to be in this place and around these people who knew their purpose. And so it was community. It was having mentors. It was seeing people talk about life in terms that I had never been exposed to before.
Wow,
talking about vision, talking about what they're going to do, what they're hoping to be in 5 years, right? Actually thinking about their relationships, their friendships, their dating relationships in light of their future and what they feel like they've been put. That was mind blowing for me. I'd never been exposed to anything like that.
So now you find out like your purpose, you're figuring it out at 17, it sounds like. Now you're going on, like you really enjoy church. I think a lot of people have like my experience of church is like you're supposed to go, and you have to go. And one of the things I realized about people that go to church is that Sunday feels really good for them, right? Because you got the praise and worship. You're in this environment that's really like powerful. But Monday through Saturday, I find people struggle during those times. How long did this like feeling last for you in regards to being able to like feel like you're in your purpose throughout the week, not just on Sundays?
Yeah, that's real good. So had a great teenage experience that was very helpful to me as I went into college. When I got into college and then into grad school and then needed to move into my career. So I'm growing. I'm in my 20s. So real life is setting in. You know, now the student loan payments are setting in, right? And so life is getting real. And so now, and I'm also asking questions that I've never asked before about life, about my own story, going a little bit deeper, trying to explore deeper wounds, trying to explore, you know, father wounds, you know, trying to explore, okay, you know, why did my family end up homeless? You know, trying to, you know, we got out of that, you know, so great, but how does that, so trying to figure a lot of those things out. And what is it that I need to do as an adult to respond to that? So I thought that I was going to be a school social worker. This was my plan. I'd gone to school for social work. I majored in social work and Christian ministries, and I took some communications classes. And so I thought I was going to be a school social worker. I thought I was going to be, you know, every after school special, that cool person that all the kids hang out in their office, and I was going to fix all their problems, you know, like head of the class. Some of y'all remember that show. But right around 2003, I ended up being connected to a church plant in Detroit that was being planted by my youth pastor from Salem. And from then on, I was in ministry, and I started walking down this really weird path that I did not plan or did not lay out. So I'm doing church planting, which I'd never heard of, because as long as I'd ever lived, churches were just always there, or churches split. So it was First Baptist Church, and somebody got mad at the pastor, and they left and started Second Baptist Church. That's how churches. That's how churches happened, right? It's all of my life. But I didn't know that people actually did this thing called planting churches. Okay, so now I'm learning what that means, and I'm helping other people to do that, and I have no clue what this is. And then people find out that I have a little bit more knowledge than they do, so then they ask me to come to help them with what they do. Then they start paying me. So now I'm a consultant. Then I meet another mentor named Samuel Chand. If you don't know who Samuel Chand is or never heard of him, you got to follow him. He's a brilliant guy. But then I connect with him, and I start getting more involved with helping churches to reach people, to be more relevant in their community. And I started figuring something out. As I'm trying to figure out my purpose and work through my life issues, I'm coming across more and more churches who don't see the opportunity that they have to really help people become who they were created to become. Churches, I'm going into consulted churches, and I'm sitting down with pastors, and I'm sitting down with leaders, and they're saying things like, help us grow our attendance, help us, grow our membership, help us do this campaign, help us develop a strategic plan, help us go to the next level. Everybody wants to go to the next level, whatever that means, right? So help us go to the next level. and help us do some great things. And I'm like, okay, but then there are people in their churches who are dealing with the same things that I'm dealing with as a young adult professional.
Mhm.
Like, am I in the right space of life? Like, how is the junk of my past keeping me from my full potential? And how do I work through that? What gifts have I not tapped into yet? What is my real calling? Who have I been sent? What must I do? Right? So I'm working through those questions, just like people that I'm meeting in their churches that are working through these questions. And I'm sitting with these pastors and leaders, and they're going, Doc, we gotta, because everybody in the church is Doc. Doc, we gotta get to the next level. Doc, come on, help us grow. And not, and I don't mean to say that every pastor or every church leader is bad. I just think that this is part of it is the model that we've all grown up in.
Mhm.
Part of it is just this is what we've come to know,
Mhm.
right? So church, the purpose of church is to get people in a building and get them to go through, these exercises on a Sunday morning, sing some songs, pray some prayers, preach a good sermon, hoop and holler,
Mhm.
get them excited, run around, dance, leave, and then come on back next week so we can get our next hit, right? And meanwhile, Monday through Sunday, everybody's frustrated on their job. People are in relationships and their relationships are not transforming. People are, trying to figure out stuff that really goes deep into their childhood, like the trauma that's informing, trauma that they have not resolved that's keeping them from being able to transition. And so all this stuff is going on in the church, but we've been programmed to think that what church is supposed to do is keep people going until we see each other on Sunday.
Why? So it sounds like from your perspective, the reason why that model has been going on for so long is because it's kind of the way it's always been. So people are just adapting to the model.
Yeah.
So we don't talk about what's going on. We just stay on the surface level because it's safe there. Going deeper is a little bit more complicated.
Yeah. And there's a saying that I have now. And I think this pretty much sums up, because I don't think the majority of people who perpetuate that model are evil people.
Mm-mm.
Here's the thing. I just think I asked the question, how often do you think about the way you think?
Right.
Like, when was the last time that you stopped to think about the way you think? So when was the last time you stopped to think about the way you think about church, to think about the way you think about your life, to think about the way you think about marriage, to think about, not to think about marriage, the way you think about it.
Yeah.
So to ask yourself questions like, where did I get my information? What is my source of information? Where was I when I first saw this model? Who imprinted this model on me? And what were their motives? Or is this even working? And if it's working, how do we know it's working? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I used to be the kind of consultant, and I used to be, because I'm a pastor, I'm a coach, I'm a consultant. First, I'm a husband and a dad, but I consult, right? So I used to be the kind of consultant where if you told me, come on in and do a strategic plan for us, and we'll pay you, all I needed to hear was, and we'll pay you. That's all I needed to hear. Okay, whatever. Sure. But now I'm the kind of consultant where I'm like, I really want to work with people who are thinking about the way that they think.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to work with people and organizations who are in a space where they are unwilling to perpetuate the things that they've not stopped to think about. Because I think that if we continue to perpetuate this, we'll look up 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, and we will have built lives that we are unhappy in, right? Just because that's what we've always done.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been programmed to think, okay, if you work a job for 30 years and you retire from that job with a 401k that you can live off of for the rest of your life and visit your grandkids, you're going to be happy. And yet people are in well-paying jobs and people are, successful and they're not happy. So I went through all that. This is my story. So I went through that. So I sort of climbed the ladders of ministry, I guess you want to say, and became a senior pastor and pastored a church, great church, tremendous church, great people, and preached and did the Sunday thing and did the ministry thing. And we did a lot of great things there, but something was missing. And what I realized was that the something that was missing was what I get to do now. So I transitioned out of that role and then transitioned into another role where I then served the denomination. Now I'm basically the consultant for all of the churches in the denomination, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going from church to church, and that was cool. But then I'm like, okay, something still is missing. And what's missing is, for me, I feel like God has uniquely wired me to help people to process through those questions. Who are you? Why are you here? What do you need to do now? Where is your life headed? So I am the person who helps people and organizations move from here to there. To get from wherever you are to that space where you have to be, because that's where you've been created to be, and to help you figure out what that means. And so I think at some point, I just became unwilling to do the motions of ministry. And so even now, what's beautiful about that is that God's kind of brought me full circle. So now I'm back in the church, serving the church that, pretty much birthed me into that helped me first place where I understood what purpose even meant, what life purpose meant. So now it's a church that's trying to look ahead to its future, and the opportunity to help raise other leaders and to help support them as they discover what they've been created to do. So it's just cool. So now I know this space, now able to lead a network where all we do in this network, all we do is help people be who they were created to be, do what they were created to do, live the life they were created to live. That's my space right now.
I think that you said something powerful about the fact that a lot of times we don't think about what we're thinking about a situation. And I think a lot of that has to do with just living in America. Our society kind of teaches us, you do this, you do that. You have to keep climbing the ladder, and that looks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're taught, America, in our society, you're taught that if you perform, then you will be. So get better at your performance. So perform. Do it. Do. Get better at it. Do more. Do better. And if you faithfully do, and if you pick something, so every one of us in school, we had our teachers ask us, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the question really wasn't, what do you want to be? The question was, what do you want to do? Because then we would say things like firefighter or and those are all performance-oriented things, right? It's not, our education system is not set up to acculturate people into their unique identity. Our spiritual system is not set up to help people to develop them into who they were, right? So we perform, but it's the other way around. And so we need to be thinking about, how am I transforming? How am I becoming? What is my story? What have I been through? What am I learning? How am I growing? Because if I can first become who I'm supposed to become. And if I can make commitments on a regular basis to stop and think about who I'm supposed to be, I will by default do what I be. So my phone doesn't wake up in the morning and say, what do I need to do today? It's a phone. So it's ready to function according to its design. And so the fact that I know that it's a phone, I'm not going to use it as a hammer because I know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you know who you are and you're growing in an understanding of who you are, then you realize that the more you become more of who you are, you will default to do who you are.
Oh, that's the word right there.
So we're stressing out trying to figure out, what am I going to do with my life? And the reason why that question evades us is because what you're supposed to do is not a thing to be figured out. It's a thing to be lived out. And you live that out when you realize who you're supposed to be, because when you know who you are, you do what you be. It's bad English.
That's it.
It's bad English, but it's good theology, right?
It is.
So it's our journey, then our quest is to kind of flip the way we think on its head, which is hard to do in our society because we reward performance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we have to shift the way we think. You see what I did there? We have to
Mm-hmm.
shift the way we think so that we can think about and dedicate intentional space in our lives to who are we becoming? How am I transforming? When we go through stuff and when challenges come. So now I've learned to ask myself, when challenges come, what is this trying to teach me about me?
Mm.
Not firstly, what do I need to do? Because I'm not going to know what to do until I learn the lesson that is trying to teach me about me.
That leads me, I put a question up because I want to make sure I get to that, because if you look at church differently, the purpose, because I want to get into your manifest. But before I get to that piece, I want you to tell my audience, how important is it to know your story? I think that you mentioned a lot today about who am I, what happened, and all of these things, because now, a lot of people are in quarantine. They're forced to look at their story. That can be very, very hard to do. But tell people a little bit about like how important it is and what can come out of looking at your story.
Yeah. Knowing your story is critical. In the covenant, the denomination that I served, there was an experience that we do. There is an experience that the covenant does. That is an experience. It's a journey of racial righteousness, and it's called Sankofa. And the reason why it's called Sankofa is the word Sankofa speaks to looking back in order to go forward. That you understand what to do based upon how well you can understand where you've come. So story is important because story helps you to understand more about how you've been formed, right? Because you've been formed by your experiences. You've been formed by the people who've been in your life. And experiences, good and bad, form you in helpful ways. And so it's really important to be able to look at your whole life and begin to realize the character that you are in that narrative. Because your life will give you clues. Your story to this point will give you clues about your future. And I'll give you an example. Mm-hmm. And so I'll take my consulting hat off and put on my preacher hat. So there's a guy in the Bible, his name is David. And so many of us know the story of David and Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
And so David, before he fights Goliath, somebody asks him, how do you know you can fight Goliath? And he says, well, this one time I was tending my sheep and a lion came, and I looked at the lion, and the lion grabbed one of my sheep. And I looked at the lion and I was like, where you think you're going with my sheep? So I fought the lion off my sheep. Then another time a bear came, and I looked at the bear and I was like, where you think you're going with my sheep? So I fought the bear off. And so he looked over his story and he said, if I'm tracking, watch this, if I'm tracking the themes that come out of my story, if I look back at my experience with the lion and I look back at my experience with the bear,
Mm-hmm.
I think that what my story is telling me is that I have a good track record in dealing with things that are bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could defeat the lion and if I could defeat the bear, then I might be able to take out this giant. So let me do it. And so your story will give you information about who you are. It'll reveal your nature. It'll reveal skills to you. It will reveal wisdom to you. It will give you clues. I look back on my life every now and then, and I will pick out themes, because just like a good book or a good movie has themes to it, your life has some themes, and those themes speak to you. So one of the themes of my life is transition. I look back over my life, and I've been through a lot of different changes and transitions. And lo and behold, a lot of the times when I sit with individuals and I sit with organizations and I'm sitting with them, I had this epiphany 2 or 3 years ago. That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
How? And people knew it better than I knew it,
Mm-hmm.
because they had been paying more attention to my own life than I had. So they were calling me saying, hey, we're going through a transition. We need you to help us out. And I'm like, why do people keep calling me for this kind of stuff? And so I had to sit down and look at my own story and say, oh, because I've been through this and I've been through this and I've been through this and I've been through that and I've been through that. And those experiences have given me a skill set, right? So your story gives you so much for your future and helps you to know what decisions you're going to end up making.
And, the David story, in order for us to see who we were designed or to see that we are capable of doing certain things, we have to be mindful of the lens that we look out of, right? So like if we use the example you just gave of David, if he didn't look at it as like, yes, there was some things there was some stumbling blocks and I was able to get over it. Or he could have gave up on tending the sheep and said, there's too many stumbling blocks. Maybe this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. So being mindful of the narrative that you're creating, because you can look at it one way or the other way. And a lot of times we tend to go with the negative side. So we don't end up moving up the ladder.
That's right. That's right. He could have said, why do all these big things keep coming after me, and miss the fact that he had been positioned for victory every time. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. So I want to kind of talk about what you're doing now, because you went through all of these transitions. We kind of talked about like what church looked like and how sometimes it felt like there was performances taking place. Wes asked a really good question. Do you look at church now differently, like the purpose of church? And I think it kind of leads into what you're doing now with your network.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. I would say, I would say I look at church more fully. I would say I see what church is more clearly. And I see the need for what church should be, needs to be, and why it's needed now more than ever, especially now, particularly right now. I think that it was interesting to me when the crisis first, the COVID-19 crisis first happened. There were a lot of people online arguing and, a lot of debates, how I can't believe so many pastors are shutting down church. And, you hear in the news of pastors who, they say things like, here it is, the government is shutting down church. And the truth of the matter is, I've begun to see what church is much more fully, to recognize that that's actually kind of literally impossible. And, there's literally no way to shut down church, because church is not a building. The church is not a building. It's not a place where you go. The church is not an activity. So let's have some church in here. Well, that really describes something else that we created. It's not bad. It's just something else that we created contextually, right? So we gotta come up with another name for that, because it's not really what church is. The church is who we are. And so what I've come to understand, Wes, is that church is that agency. It is that body. It is that collective in the world that connects me back to the God who created me, that allows me to have a connection to my Creator. And now, because of my connection and because of my community, I can more fully be who I'm here to be.
Mm-hmm.
And in being who I'm here to be, my first mission, in however I express and live out who I'm here to be, my first mission is to help other people find that same connection. Because if other people can find that same connection, my mission is to help other people find that connection. If I help other people find that connection, then they now have a connection that helps them to overcome fear.
Mm-hmm.
They have a connection that helps them to understand the full power of their story.
Mm-hmm.
They have a connection that helps them to be able to process through many of their life experiences. They have a connection that helps them to know their purpose and their identity more fully. That's right. The church is who we are. And with the God who created me and the Savior who restores that connection, and my community who comes around me to walk alongside of me to help me find that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can be more present and show up more in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now I can process out my identity. Now I can find and discover what my calling is in the moment. Now I can figure out what is the next right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can make my next move.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can move through the challenges and the trials of life in a much more healthy and holistic way. And I think that's the way I see church now. So what I'm able to do now with Manifest Network is, we are not, people ask me, is this a church? My response is, we are church. We are church.
Mm-hmm.
Because church is not, when you say, is this a church? Really what people are asking you in that question is this a institution like the other institutions that I've come to know? which those institutions didn't exist in Bible times. In the book of Acts, there was no, First Jerusalem, Church of God, Holiness Temple. There was none of that. It was just people who gathered together who were trying to figure this thing out.
Mm-hmm.
And they gathered together in all kinds of sizes. They, large, really, really large, and really, really small. And so, there were no denominations. There were no robes. I mean, it was just people. It was just people connecting to other people and watching miracles happen and really incredible things happen when they figured out who they were supposed to be. It's just regular people doing extraordinary things. And that's what Manifest Network is. And so there are people who are part of Manifest Network who belong to other institutions and other churches.
Mm-hmm.
But they connect to this because our purpose and our movement, it exists to help people be who they were created to be, do what they were created to do, live the life they were created to live. And we do that by gathering together. So we unite. We unite in fellowship. We unite in prayer. We unite in conversation and discovery and discernment. We equip. So we host trainings and workshops. We share content. There are lots of leaders that are a part of this network that we want to produce content to help people be who they were created to be. And then we release. And that release, I think, is my favorite part, because the release part is all about, okay, now what you going to do? So let's push you forward. Because again, we can do this exercise of coming to a space and feeling really good and getting really happy and getting all the goosebumps. But if we're not going to take that, what happens in that space, or take those great messages that we hear and go do something with it, then what does that mean? So we release people. And so through Manifest Network, people have started businesses, they've written books, they've launched curriculum, they've started other churches, they have relocated and started new lives, they've gotten unstuck. And so this is, no matter what I do vocationally, I'll be doing Manifest forever until God tells me to stop. So
no, that's good. So you could find manifestnetwork.org. I had the privilege of attending one a few years ago in California, one of his gatherings, Manifest gatherings. One thing I want you to say, I love how you talk about what happened to you and your response. I think that caveat would be helpful right now, because I think a lot of things are happening to people during this time. And I really want to give another angle to it, because I like the way you describe that when you talk about that.
Which part?
The transition part, about as you're transitioning, it's not
Yeah. So with every time you come to a place of change is what happens to you. So we don't control a lot of the things that happen to us. And it's funny too, when people say, when I ask people, how do you feel about change? A lot of people say, I don't like change. And I'll say, oh, let me talk to your boss and let me work out a raise for you, an unexpected raise. But I won't do that though, because you just told me that you don't like change. No, I want that raise though. I want that raise. So you like change. Okay. So when we say we don't like change, what we don't like is the change we cannot control.
Yeah.
That's what we don't like. What we don't like is the kind of change that we cannot govern. We don't like the kind of change we cannot tell it what to do. And we don't like the change when we don't know how to respond. So change is what happens to us, whether we invite it or not, want it or not, schedule it or not. I promise you, COVID-19 was on nobody's calendar for the first quarter. At least, none of us. So it was on none of our calendars. And, but it happened. And we get stuck because we don't know how to respond when change happens. That's why we get stuck. And so transition, though, is how you respond. So transition is how you respond. And so so now I've come to the place when I find myself in a place of change, when I find myself in a place of transition, like I was in a few years ago, where I realized, okay, something was missing. God might be stirring something new in me. Every now and then I'll get a new stir. And that's either a sign that I'm growing in a new way. Whenever you get unsettled in anything, it's either a sign, vocationally, it's either a sign that you're about to be growing or you're about to be going. It's one of those two. And you can decide that very early on. So you're either gonna grow or you're gonna go. And when I realized that, I had to process through two questions. First of all, the first two questions were, what do I know to be true about me? What do I know to be true about me? And what do I know to be true about God? And I realized that there might be people, listening to this who are at different, stages and places in their journey and thinking about God and, all of that. And that's okay. That's fine. The reason why the God question is important is because I believe that God is in my life, and I can only speak for me. In my life, God is the one who works with the things I can't control. So my choice is to trust God with the things that I don't know or can't control. So I only have two responsibilities. It's what do I know to be true about me, and what do I know to be true about God? So do I feel like God is inviting me into something? And is this the character of God in the way that I know God to do this, to as best as I know it, right? So I'm not going to get the full picture. I'm not going to get all the information, but what do I have? And then when it comes to me, what do I know to be true about me? So that question drills down a little bit deeper. That question really is about, okay, so what's my story, right? So what are the themes that work in my life? Do these opportunities that are before me seem consistent with the other opportunities that have been before me before, right? Is there something about this next step that stirs my heart in an unusual way that I can't let go of? Is there something timely about this invitation? Is this something that, it's coming around now and it might not come around again, and if I were to make this decision, what would the transition look like? So what would I gain? What would I lose? How would that impact my family? Right. So it's always a conversation of what will this mean for my wife, for my marriage, for my daughter? So it's the understanding and really thinking about it. And I'm the kind of person where I can process things, real deep. And just be there for like forever. And I have to shock myself and say, okay, action now. But I think our culture, though, doesn't somewhere along the way, we started saying things like, you don't have to be that deep. I don't know when that happened, but we started saying things like they're just so deep, and somehow being deep became a pejorative. And so then, what's the opposite of deep? It's surface. So we have a very, I think, surface approach to a lot of different decisions and a lot of different ways. And some things we need to be deep about.
We do. And it won't be an overnight thing, right? And some people that are used to having things happen quick, or when you don't see results, you kind of like stop really thinking about the processing part. This processing part that Shaun is talking about is something that takes place over time. But I think it's a necessary thing to try to start implementing into your life. And I think now more than ever, where, you know, a lot of us are forced into this space, looking at it and from a different angle as for an opportunity to really start to look at your life in a different way.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that would be helpful.
And what I love about what I get to do at this point in my life is that's what we do, is we give people tools and language and support and a community for that processing.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people, that whole concept is foreign. You know, we go through life, we go through the motions, we
Mm-hmm.
do what we do, we wake
Mm-hmm.
up, we go to work, we get in the car, we come home, we get
Yeah.
something to eat,
Yeah.
we go to bed. And processing, thinking about the way you think, thinking about life, thinking about purpose. I ain't got time for that. You know, I got to get up for work in the morning. I got to wash these clothes. I got to get these kids to bed. But it's so critical. And so even back to that last question about how I think about church, I think we have to have spaces that give us space and margin and opportunity to process and think about our own lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is really good. I'm glad that you came on. One thing that I like to say, if there's somebody's listening to this and they're hearing you and they're feeling really motivated by what you're saying, give them like some first steps to start to work on self.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first step is to make a decision that from this point forward, you're going to be honest with yourself, right? You're going to create honest space that you're going to say things like, it's okay that I'm not fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay that I'm not happy. That, yes, I'm successful on the outside. I have a great job. People respect me. I make good money. But it's okay for you to say, I'm not good.
Mm-hmm.
Something's missing. Because you won't find what is most true about you and your life until you're willing to expose what you haven't been dealing with, right? And most of us, the way we've been taught to move through life is to prop up the facade. That's how we've been taught to do it. I'm good, I'm fine. Fake it till you make it. That's what we've been taught.
Mm-hmm.
Fake it till you make it. So it's first to make a decision. I'm be honest with myself. I'm not happy.
Yeah.
I'm not at peace with myself. Something's missing. Something's not right. I'm not fully here. I'm not fully the person that I feel like I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that conversation, begin to really do whatever you need to do to look back over your life. And some people have the capacity for introspection. Like some people are very good at journaling and they have journals. So, you know, they can pull out the last 10 years of their journals and just kind of weave together a story. Whether you are or you aren't, the next step is to ask yourself the question, now that I'm ready to be honest with myself, who do I need to invite in to my life to help me begin to process where I go from here?
Mm-hmm.
The truth is we were not meant to do this alone. We're not configured that way.
Mm-hmm.
I know you know, you're super and you're amazing and you bad, but none of us, as good as we are, as great as we are, none of us were made to do this alone. You need a mentor, you need a coach, you need somebody in your life, you need a partner, you need a prayer partner and accountability, you need a community, you need something that you can be tethered to that will become invested in you being more than just the motions.
And sometimes it means getting rid of some people in our lives, right? I think like, yeah, we may need to add some things, but sometimes we row in a boat and somebody's poking holes in it. We're trying to figure out why we're not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I think that's an important part to not miss as well.
Yep. Change equals growth. Growth equals loss. Loss
Does.
equals pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're going to be more of the person that you were created to be, part of that honesty is reconciling that you're going to have to let some things go, some
Yeah.
people go,
Yeah.
some habits go, some ways of being go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the community will come in, because I'm not very good at letting go of things without grabbing hold of new things. I have to, it's almost like I have to do a catch and release.
Mm-hmm.
So like, as I let go of things, I have to be tethered to people who are pulling me in the direction away from the thing I just let go.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's, and then begin to develop a vision for who you believe you've been created to be. Notice what I didn't say. I didn't say develop a vision for your life. I'm not against vision boards. I think it's great. I just think that I've done enough vision boards to know that life is not obligated to honor my vision boards. And I came up with a lot of plans that just didn't unfold the way I planned it. And so I think what I've come to at this point in my life is I spend a lot less time thinking about what I'm going to do in 10 years and a lot more time thinking about who I'm going to be in 10 years.
I like it.
Yeah, because I have no control whatsoever of what's going to be happening in the world. I have no control whatsoever. Those are just things we don't control. And trying to control the future is a foolish distraction from the elements that we actually can control. We can control our development.
Mm-hmm.
We can control our growth.
Mm-hmm.
We can control what we take in to our spirits and to our minds and to our souls, what we allow into our emotional world, the boundaries that we set relationally, all of those things that influence who we become.
Yeah.
And so I would just say develop a vision for who you are being called to be and invite other people into that and let them challenge you. Get there.
Yes, no, that's good. That's really helpful. It's good. I just wanted to highlight the part about growth and change equals loss, and it's sad. It's a hard process, and one of the things I think that we try to do is try to drown out the negative or the hard feelings, right? And so I tell people you can't, the hard feelings and the good feelings are part of who we are. If you try to drown out one, you're drowning out the good side too. So if we can understand that pain and loss is a part of life, like if we just kind of accept it as part of life, it's a hard acceptance. I'm not saying it's easy, but if we can work on accepting it, I think that we can work on getting over that hump that we struggle with getting over because we don't want to let some things go because it's a loss. So we'd rather be uncomfortably comfortable as opposed to being uncomfortable to the point where we can climb up and get to a place that we were designed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we would rather deal with comfortable stagnancy.
Yeah.
Than uncomfortable forward movement.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of our conditioning too.
Mm-hmm.
But when we begin to see loss and pain as the formative tools that really work on our lives to help us become who we're meant to become, we'll receive them differently.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one year I lost like 4 people in the space of 3 months. And I learned a lot about death. I learned a lot about grief. I learned a lot about loss, and it hurt. I lost a mentor, lost a friend. I lost my cousin I grew up with as a sister. I lost my grandmother. And that hurt. But then when I became a pastor, I pastored a church wherein my first 2 years, I did like 20 funerals. And so all of that stuff came back, right? And I was able to be present in a different way. So I was able to, because of the pain that I had gone through, I was able to support families who were going through these different types of, all those things form you in ways that you can't see or know for the future that's in store for you.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to learn how to not love them, not like them. I don't like the things that, not love them.
Nope.
You said it, but receive them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's good. Shaun, this was so good. I have chills. I love having these conversations. I think that it took me a while to get to the place of the way that I think. We think a lot on the same level. Not because we came from a trust fund. We're not trust fund babies.
Right.
You know, I just want to make, and we're not, and I think that you know, like our stories and our histories, like I bring different people on because I want people to know, like, we're just like you, like we have similar stories, and so like I think sharing the process allows people to get a little bit of hope, you know, a different kind of hope, not the drug Sunday hope that we talked about, but some real hope that I can really make concrete changes, and action is a big part of that.
Yes.
The action piece has to happen.
Yes. Yep. And that it's actually helpful to see people who don't pretend like they've always arrived,
Mm-hmm.
which helps you to know that, okay, I'm stuck, but I don't have to be stuck.
Yep.
And I'm hurt, but I don't have to stay hurt.
Yep. Yep.
And I'm confused, but I don't have to stay confused. And I am lost, but I don't have to stay lost.
Yeah.
Because when I hear these stories and I hear how these stories have been processed,
Mm-hmm.
it's the story and it's the process of the story that
Mm-hmm.
lets me know, okay, maybe I can deal with my story, because if you figured out the process of your story, then maybe there's some process in my story.
Yes. Yeah. That's so good. Thank you so much for your transparency. If you guys want to follow Shaun Marshall, Shaun, tell people how they can follow you. If you're listening to this on the podcast, you can find the information in the show notes.
So Facebook, follow me, Shaun Marshall, ShaunMarshall. Instagram, S Douglas Marshall, manifestnetwork.org, manifestnetwork.org.
Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you
for being here. And I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you. So y'all, this is my therapist, in case you didn't.
It's unofficial.
Unofficially, which unofficially means that she's stacking all the invoices. She can send me one big bill. And so I sneak therapy into a text message, and then she responds. So she's tracking all of that all of that billing is being catch me one big lump sum payment. But no, I love you. I appreciate you. I think what you're doing is awesome and amazing. And so thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so that was Shaun. Wes, thank you for your kind words. You're so awesome. I appreciate you so much. That was Shaun Marshall. He's on Facebook, Instagram, and Manifest Network, as you can see right there, .org. And there's a Facebook group. So definitely it'd be dope to kind of tap into that. So that was my podcast. So people that listen to my podcast, this is kind of the way I usually do it. The people that I usually have on during the week live, we just kind of come on to, I like to bring people on to kind of talk about how they're dealing with COVID, but I really wanted to go into Shaun's story. I've been wanting to have him on for some time now, so I figured we might as well just do it live. If you just came in here, my name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. I've created this like live show Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can come in and hear from somebody else every day. Monday through Friday, we're going to have somebody else on. But before we go, one of the things I always say is that shifting the way you think, right? That's kind of my thought process behind what I do. And so this is my logo. So if you ever see this, this is my logo, and there's gears inside. And inside the gears, there's these words. And so this is the process that you need to do in order to shift the way you think. So and we talked a lot about this on today's show. You can watch the replay. Where we talked about like understanding your story, right? So number one, understand what you're thinking. Number two, reframe those negative thoughts. A lot of times the things that we're thinking are very negative. And so we have to like process, what am I thinking? Let me work on reframing them and the action plan. Shaun talked about this too. The action steps has to take. Be consistent with the process. You have to be consistent with this process. It's not like a one-time deal. And I think, understanding the process allows you to get through the hard times. So because I know that life is pain, there's loss, I know that as I'm growing, I might have to get rid of some people, then it'll be easier for me to do the process, right? Repeat, that's important. We have to keep repeating. And I think going through this process allows us to heal. And then so inside of these words, I highlighted faith. Because I honestly believe in order to complete this process, like we have to have faith and we have to believe in ourselves. I think a lot of times that's what's missing from us being able to kind of get through the process is that we don't have faith. We don't believe in ourselves. And in order to like have that faith, if you don't feel like you have it, really start to feed your spirit, right? I tell people when you're hungry, you don't question why your stomach's hurting, right? You're like, oh, I got to go to the refrigerator and get something to eat. And I think when our spirit is starving, when we're feeling all of this fear, when we're feeling stuck, if we can just use that same concept, the same way we go to the refrigerator and eat, if I'm full of fear and if I'm feeling stuck, like, you know what, how have I fed my spirit lately? What do I need to do to feed my spirit? Like really trying to be mindful of that analogy so that you can start to change the narrative and work with what's within your control, right? There's a lot within our control that we don't even understand because we're so used to going through the motions. So it's important to understand that process. And then, so if you want to follow me on Instagram, you can follow me, Celeste the Therapist, on Instagram. That's my page where I just talk about mental health and keep you up to date on what's happening with the podcast. This is just my personal Instagram where I talk about my life or share my life on here. _ it's me, Celeste _ you can find that there. Hey, Robin, thank you. I'm glad you like the guests. I'm grateful for my guests for being here. And then my podcast, if you want to follow my podcast, you can do that. Celeste the Therapist podcast, streaming on all platforms. And before I end the show really quick, just want to put up this text line. We're in week 4. This is week 4 of the quarantine for a lot of people. And I know this is hard. One of the things Shaun said was like, be okay with saying you're not okay. And so like, if you're not okay and you don't have support or you don't have anybody to talk to, I really want you to reach out for support, utilize the line. Every state has different kind of resources. So like whatever state you're in, maybe you can check out your state's website as well. But the crisis text line, that's a national line that you can utilize because, this isn't easy. There's no right or wrong way to deal with the pandemic. Nobody has been in a pandemic before. So, be patient with yourself. Thank you, Caroline. I appreciate you. Be patient with yourself. Be kind with yourself. A lot of times, like as parents, you're trying to do homework, you're trying to do work, you're trying to like deal with your own emotions. So it's okay to take space and breathe. I said on my Instagram this last week, a few days ago, like I felt like everything was coming on me. Like I felt like my body was tensing up, and I've already been working from home, so a lot hasn't changed for me. But a lot hasn't changed for me, and so like just everything that's happening, it feels overwhelming. And so sometimes you may start experiencing it in your body. You may not even realize like what you're thinking, but your body starts to feel a certain way. So many different things happen because of what's happening in life right now. And so my goal is to help you kind of be aware of it, kind of educate you about the different things that may be changing for you, and so that you can understand it, right? Because it's easy for us to like feel stuck and stay stuck, and that's hard, I think, for a lot of us. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll be back on tomorrow, 8 p.m. Even when you're not trying to, your body reacts. Exactly, John. Hey, John. So even when you're trying not to react, your body will do it on its own. So, so be mindful of what your body feels like. Like, just be mindful of that. Because, so many different things are happening at one time. And you may, like, your body might be twisting one way. Instead of you trying to figure out how to straighten it up, you just might start twisting with it. So you just get normal with the uncomfortability of being twisted. So just try to be mindful of that. There's just little things, right? But again, there's no right or wrong way to respond. Just make sure that you are staying or trying to stay in tune with yourself. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you, Wes. You're so kind. I appreciate you guys so much for rocking out with me. Find any of my social media platforms at Celeste the Therapist. And until next time, guys, I will talk to you later.
Every laugh, every smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste the Therapist. Let's go.